is preparing, is setting us up. All right. Fabulous. It looks like we are live. Let me make sure I check. And we'll
All
make sure we're going to
right.
start sharing it out as people start
Yes.
being notified.
All
Make sure we're
right.
going to start sharing it. Oh, yeah, gonna turn that volume down. I know me. Oh, yeah, I gotta do the same thing. Turn this volume down. Very good.
Okay.
Okay, let's see. Got that right here. I see some people coming on. Let me turn this volume down. Let's turn this volume down. Yes, indeed. All right. All right. I see us. We're got this right here. Oh my goodness. It's so good to be here. It's so good to
So good to
be
be
here.
with you, Suzette.
And welcome everybody. As you get on, make sure you share, tag someone, because this is a special edition of Relationship Talk. Normally it's Tuesdays with, but it's actually a special Monday edition where I have a special guest on today, and we're going to get into some real talk. So if you're tuning in, let us know that you're here. Let other people know that we're streaming live from Facebook only. So I hope some of my Instagram people got the memo and they'll be jumping on pretty soon and everything. I've got my trusty cell phone so I
Ah,
can see the comments. And have you been able
yes.
to share it okay, Lori?
I believe I have been able to share it okay. I may need to
Go down to that share button and you should be able to look on your page and see that we are streaming from your page too. Because this is an important conversation. We don't want anybody to miss it. I
yes.
think it's one that not just is appropriate for Black History Month,
Mhm.
but I think it's one that we just need to have that'll make a difference in our lives. Don't you think so?
I agree with that. I truly, truly agree with that. I'm just so excited. I've been looking forward to this ever since we discussed it. And yes, I agree. It's an important conversation.
Very important. And I'm just so glad. I'm glad to have met you. I'm glad that I don't want to say that we stumbled into each other. It was too intelligent the way we met for it to be a coincidence. The older I get, I don't believe in coincidences anyway.
And
I,
I agree. It was divinely inspired.
that
And I really felt that. I really agree with you on that. Absolutely.
fantastic. Well, I'm going to introduce me to those that don't know me, and then I'm going to have you introduce yourself as well. For those of you who are just jumping on, my name is Suzette Viernon, and I'm a life coach and relationship solutionist. And I help high achieving women over the age of 40 to redefine what makes them enough in life and in love on their own terms. Because many of the people who I talk to, they're having difficulty in their relationships. And I help them to break the cycle of failed relationships, failed attempts, breaking the cycle of doing the same thing over and over and over and over again and coming up short in their relationship lives so that they can attract the real deal, great, healthy love into their lives. And one of the reasons I believe this conversation is so apropos is because your relationship with yourself is the most important factor that you can have, that you can bring into any relationship space. And so, having this conversation about our roots and about healing shame is one that I feel like is so necessary, especially among the Black community, of those of us of African descent, which sent me on this journey in the first place, trying to connect with my own roots and everything. And I happened to, in my searching, the road led to me meeting Lori, and I just wanted to share our private conversation publicly because it was
Yes.
so uplifting. It was so necessary. So, Lori, I want you to introduce yourself and what you do and how this conversation really intersects with what you're doing, and to please your African name. I mess it up. That's why I'm not even attempting to. It's like a person trying to speak French and it's like they're pronouncing everything wrong. And so I
You,
want to introduce you to everybody.
well, first of all, let me start by saying it's just an honor to be here with you. And I want to give all praises to the Most High. And for him, as I said, the grand creator, great spirit, allowing us to come together for this blessed time. I also, let me see, I got a message that it's not streaming, but I want to make sure that it is. And once again, to the Ata of the Igala kingdom, I want to give honor to the Ata. And I also want to give honors to the great ambassador, Ayegba Abdullahi Adojo, who is joining us all the way from Nigeria today, as well as my Nigerian Igala family, Igala, the Igala kingdom, and all of our African friends and family who have been so very supportive. I'm just truly grateful for their support and for them being here today to support this conversation. So I also want to acknowledge that, yes, Ufedojo Agula is an Igala name, and the Igala kingdom is a kingdom that's over 5,000 years old, that still exists today in Nigeria. And it does have a king. An Ata is what we call him, our spiritual father. And once again, I just want to welcome and thank the ambassador, who is a researcher, a historian, who has helped support me in this journey as I have reconnected, and he has taken on the work of reconnecting those scattered in the diaspora to reconnect us to our roots. And he took that commission very seriously from the previously deceased king. And he has been really doing his very best to reconnect us. So, thanks to social media. Let me get back to my name. Let me go back to Ufudojo Agula. And if I don't look at the comments, please forgive me. I am, I know you said that we will go back through the comments and, do that as well. So we definitely are in a time where our roots matter. I heard the great historian John Henry Clark says that African descended people have been taken away from the context of the story and how African history is so very important. And so we have to understand and know that we have a value. We do have valuable contribution to our historic, our history has value. And we didn't just start at slavery. We started, we were a people that had a civilization of education, of, politics, entertainment, mathematics, science. We had that, agriculture, farming, and it was interrupted. So we have to go back to our root to figure out and see what happened in the interruption, what happened. And so African descended people understand the power in names. Names carry, when you speak over someone and you call them something and you say their name, you are saying something over them, either a virtue that you want them to aspire to, or it's something that they have in terms of their strength. And so Ufedojo means the love of God. Agula means he who remains, he or she who remains will never go astray. And so those to me were very powerful because, it sounded like I would be rooted firmly, steadfast, unmovable, always abounding in the work of our Creator. And so this work is very important, and those names fit. And so I was very grateful to the ambassador who helped me with that. And also, as we continue now, the more I've learned about our history and our culture, the more grateful I am that I'm richly blessed with being called the Oma Onyete, or the representative here locally in the United States of the Igala Kingdom there in Ida, Kogi State, Nigeria. So thank you for, allowing me to share the explanation of why I embraced my cultural name. Because as I said, I think it's very important in what you're called and what you answer to. Some people say it's not what you're called, it's what you answer to. But it's also very important to our roots and our history.
I'm so grateful. And this, just hearing you talk about it, it reminded me of the journey that brought me into your space. I recently have felt compelled to really connect with my roots. Not just my roots here in the United States, but actually where I came from. Where did my DNA originate? And the reason why it was so important to me is I think it's an intersection of so many different things just kind of coming together. One being the death of my mom, or I should say her transitioning. That when my mom transitioned, that was it. Both my parents were no longer here on this earth in the form that I knew them in, because I believe spiritually, I believe they're still here. But in the way that I was used to interacting with them, they were gone. And it left me feeling to a certain degree orphaned. Even at my age, it felt like somebody had kicked the legs of the chair that I was sitting on from underneath me. And there was a need in me to have a deeper, abiding connection. And a lot of times we think when we're grown and we've left home that we no longer have that need for that foundation. But when that foundation is gone, you feel like a jolt, like, okay, this is what I've been standing on, and now it's gone. And then also, it's no secret of what's happening in the United States, where a lot of things that our ancestors and foreparents fought so hard for, certain rights and to have a certain dignity, a certain equality, a certain say in this country. It has been one thing after another, one crime against Black bodies after another, one thing after another, almost daily when I cut on the television and look at the news. Who else has been shot? Who else has been killed? Who else, what other crimes have happened against Black bodies? And so there was something in me that said, I need to know who I am beyond the definition of what I've been handed by people in this country. And when I say people, I don't want to give it a specific persona, but I will say the definition by the founding fathers of this country. Their definition did not represent me well.
Right.
And so I needed a different definition. I needed something else to connect to that was more real than this erroneous definition. And we talked about it. In this country, our history is very, very checkered. It's very, very, it's condescending of our value and our worth. And when you're in a situation where you're constantly having to prove that you are equal, constantly prove the contributions that you've made, constantly having to prove your right to be here, constantly having to prove that you have a voice, constantly having to prove everything, then that seeps into your pores. And after a while, you start feeling like you have to earn value. You have to earn your worth and earn your worthiness. And that's a terrible definition, first of all, to have to live up to. And it minimizes your humanity. And so I felt like the definitions in this country that I've lived under all my life have been inadequate. And I was at a point with my parents no longer being here, with all the things that are happening, all the crimes that are happening against Black bodies, and the fight for our history to be part of American history, the fight for our history to be part of American history. When we were here, we were significant to American history. All of these things coming together, and me wanting my grand twins to have a different definition of who they are, to know who they are before this world system gets a hold of them.
Yes.
And tries to tell them who they think the world system thinks they should be, or tells them that they themselves are not adequate, that they're lacking. And as a result of them lacking, they have to fight for things that people who are worthy and valued don't have to fight for. And so that is what led me on this quest and on this journey to connect with my roots, because this is the thing that I felt. I felt like if I can connect to my DNA, to my roots beyond this country, then that's something that can't be taken from me.
Yes.
That no matter how you treat me, no matter what you say, and when I say me, I mean me, the collective me, the Black experience,
Yes.
the collective Black experience in this country, that if I can connect with my roots, then my roots are not objective.
Yes.
You can't take anything away from me. My roots speak for themselves, and I needed that at this time in my life, and I want that.
Yes.
For my grandkids and for the collective children to have a sense of who they are before this education system starts eating away at it. You know, and that's what landed me with you, because I was looking among my followers, and I was like, wait, I got some followers of African descent, you know, let me check my followers, let me check my friends. And we found out we were friends. And I didn't even know we were friends. And I reached out to you and I was like, you know, I found out that I am Isan. I'm of the Isan people of Nigeria.
Yes.
I have that, and Mindi and Yoruba, and I have all these different African parts to my DNA, and that's 99% African. And I was like, I want to connect with the Isan culture, the Isan people, and I need some help in connecting with my heritage. And you were like, that's what I do. And I'm like, what?
Yes, I tell you, and as I can only keep just reinforcing, it was a divine connection, and so much so that you know we're at a time where our ancestors certainly want us to reconnect to our roots. They want us to know ourselves and know who we are and understand the richness of our culture and the value of our culture. And so that's, I believe, why they're allowing us to connect with one another and to, you know, for those of like mind, you know, to connect. Because the people without a culture, just, you know, Marcus Garvey made that, you know, powerful statement. You know, it's like you have no roots. Who are you? You know yourself is an inscription that is inscribed, you know, in Kemet. Kemet is the land, I believe, of the birthplace of all civilization. Kemet is also known as Egypt, you know, but sometimes when we have heard about the one bad pharaoh, we want to throw out the baby with the bathwater and don't want to have anything to do with Egypt anymore, and think that, you know, the symbols and the the inscriptions and things may have some nefarious kind of evil connotations. And so, you know, when we're conditioned to turn our backs on our own, you know, on our own, you know, basis and our own foundation, when we are conditioned to do that, I mean, that's how we turn our backs on ourselves, and we don't even understand the power of who we are. And there's a shame when you shared the powerful testimony of how you when you were in school and you first saw, the first thing that you saw was the
Yes.
enslaved, and how, it made you
Yes.
feel like, oh wow, it kind of took some wind out of yourself, because, and that's what we have always been pounded to believe, that you have no valuable contribution, you didn't do anything. We see pictures of Africa, and we see movies that depict the babies with the bloated stomachs, and the flies flying around, and we get those mental images, and there's poverty everywhere. You can see poverty in most anywhere you go, but Africa is like 5 times larger than the United States. And so, to depict, for the media to only show us the negative side, the bad parts about, about Africa. I remember growing up, most people didn't want to have any kind of connection to Africa. I'm not African. No, I don't, they don't want to be, connected to that. And it's funny because, I've always had, growing up here in Charleston, South Carolina, which is, we believe, the ancestral capital of the United States, because of over 40% of enslaved West Africans being brought here by boat to cultivate the rice, to do agricultural farming and things like that. They specifically targeted those areas because they knew the people from those areas had the experience and the expertise to, to cultivate properly. And so my grandmother, because of her descendant, because of her inner green thumb farming, she was she was a farmer. And we watched her get all kinds of sugarcane, watermelon, okra, snap beans, you name it. She had it, corn. I mean, she went into the field from sun up to sundown, and right here in her own, and we ate a lot of those things, right from farm to table. She raised chickens, she raised hogs, had the hogs butchered and slaughtered at the local, the butcher shop. So, if I had to imagine anything African, and being, growing up, in a community, in a tribal community, in an area where, we farmed, and that being the foundation, I could really liken it to what it must have been like right here in Charleston, South Carolina. I mean, that to me was just, the cows and everything, so, but it was a valuable thing, to embrace that and know that that was who she is and who she was, just at her core, and I always used to like wrap my head and, put on jewelry around my ankles, and, and I listened to her dialect, Gullah. She was Gullah. Some people say Gullah Geechee. She had the dialect that when I used to go back home to New York, I had picked it up so much so that the people in New York was like, what did you just say? That I considered myself multilingual, because I embraced her. I embraced my grandmother. She was royal to me. And that was just, my mother was a school teacher. And for the 2 months that we were on summer vacation, we would come to Charleston and spend our time here in the country, and for 2 months at a time. And I never wanted to go. I really didn't want to go back to New York. I always favored the country living, over the city life. And so, that's just, just a fond memory that I have. Of,
that is so good that you had that, because we've been talking about, healing generational shame, and you kind of mentioned it. Of course, we've had a lot of conversations off camera. And
Yes.
so what Lori was mentioning was, I shared with her that how the media has played a significant part in disenfranchising Africans from African Americans here in this country. It's like there's been this kind of, and it's been mutual, because I've talked to some of my friends who are African, and they said the same thing happened with them, where the media, whether it's a magazine or television or whatever, that what I was fed as a little girl, and this is before, I remember being very young when I first saw the cover of a National Geographic.
Mm-hmm.
And it was not flattering, at least from me having grown up, the little bit that I had grown up here. When I saw the cover of National Geographic or opened it up to see people from Africa, it looked like the people were uncivilized. You
Mm-hmm.
know, they were dirty, they were unkept, their hair was matted, the women weren't wearing any tops, so they were exposed. And even as a little girl, I was like, no, that's not me. I'm not African. I'm not African. I don't know who they are, but they're
Mm-hmm.
not
Mm-hmm.
me.
Mm-hmm.
And that was part of it. But even before that, this whole thing with colorism, even as a little girl, I didn't even have the language for it, but there was shame around my dark skin, even around my dark skin and around the kitchens, little beady beads. We call them beady beads back here about the kitchen. And nobody told me there was
Mm-hmm.
anything wrong, but just breathing the air, just
Mm-hmm.
moving about,
Mm-hmm.
you start hearing little things, or you start seeing where somebody lighter is favored than, or like they might go past you and pick up a baby that's lighter and pay
Mm-hmm.
you no attention.
Yes,
Or
yes.
when you heard references to beauty, television, you didn't see anybody black on television. At least when I was a little girl, the soap operas didn't have anybody black on them. So
Very true.
beauty pageants were white, TV, everything was white. And there is a shame that comes when you don't see yourself, when you don't see yourself associated with beauty, when you don't
Sure.
see yourself associated with smart, when you don't see yourself in these places. And then you got within your own communities people saying, oh, she's light skinned with good hair, even
Mm.
within your own community. That just shows how the shame has gone from generation to generation to even our making those kinds of descriptors where we're differentiating each other based on color, based on hair, based on things like that, where it's seeped into our own communities, that it creates a shame around you, a shame that's subtle, a shame
Mm-hmm.
that's just like breathing. I remember
Yes.
references to people saying, girl, you better get out of that hot sun for you get dark, for you
Mm-hmm.
get
Mm-hmm.
darker. It's like, what's wrong with getting darker?
What's wrong with being dark?
What's wrong with it?
That's right.
And so there's this generational thing, and some people might say, I'm beyond that. But I believe it is so insidiously in the air we breathe, in everything uh, that this country was built on. It's in the floorboards. It's in every aspect of it, to the point that even when you don't think that you have shame around how you look, who you are, your skin color, the simple fact that you feel like you got to prove something because of it lets you know there's some shame there. That you have to explain yourself. You have to be 10 times better.
Yes.
You have to do this. You have to change. And it's no diss against anybody. But I sat in a chair for a long time, getting my ear burnt, my neck burnt, my hair scalded, just to get my hair straight.
That's right. I remember those
Because
days too.
I was told my hair was so unmanageable and it's so this.
Yeah.
So
Mm.
I think there is a generational shame
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
that is intrinsic to the Black experience.
Mm-hmm.
So much and so that even some people that I've connected with from Africa that have come here, whether they come here to study or whatever it is, have been met by the Black experience, and they weren't even born here. They don't even have a history of slavery. But because of their skin color, they're getting treated just like me, a native here, or worse if it's hard for people to understand them, you know. And so there is something about this, and I feel like the reason why connecting with your roots is a part of the healing process is because the media has tried so hard
Mhm.
to disconnect us. One of my friends was saying, and when I say friend, smiling acquaintance, because I don't really know her that well, but there's a friendliness there, and she's been so kind and everything. And I have to say, the people that I have met from Africa have been very kind to me,
Mhm.
very kind, very patient, very loving, very caring. They haven't been like, oh, you from the United States, you African American, you think you all that. I have not been met with any of that. And
Mm.
I am so grateful. I am so
Mhm.
grateful. And they were saying, well, before we came over to the United States, what we were being shown in the media was men not taking care of their families, deadbeat dads, guys walking around, with pants hanging low and kind of like almost like this shiftless, lazy thing.
Mhm.
And it's like, we didn't want to have no part of that.
Yes.
Right? And so it's this thing where we're beginning to understand. And I'm so glad that for the internet and that we can really connect
Yes.
now in a way that we can just cut down those barriers that the media has tried to create between Africans and Black people, African Americans, whatever we want to call ourselves, dark skinned people in this
Yes.
country of African descent. I'm just so grateful for the internet, for us being able to connect, and so grateful to be able to reach out to you and the different things that you've been able to share with me that have opened my mind so much. That there was a me before, and I'll say it, there was a me before white America defined me.
Yes. Yeah.
There was a me,
Mhm.
and it did
Mhm.
not need a definition. I'm enough because I'm here, right? And I think it's so important for us to have this conversation. I see some people watching. I see Troy. Thank you, Troy White, for tuning in. Thank you, Jackie. Is it Buckmeyer? Thank you so much for watching. And Pete, please feel free to share this out. Please feel free. Thumbs up to the comment if anything that we're saying is resonating with you. Because this is not, the effort of this is not to shoot down white people or anything like that. No, it's not. But it is to tell the truth. And the truth that we're talking about goes back hundreds and hundreds of years.
Yes.
And as a Black person, we've been having to bear a shame that was never ours to bear. There was
Yeah.
never supposed to be shame about my dark skin.
Not
There
at
was
all.
never supposed to be shame about my full lips, my wide nose. There was never supposed to be a shame about my hair texture. There was never supposed to be a shame about my culture, and my just where I came from. And I needed to know. I needed to have at this time in my life a definition that is mine.
Yes.
That is
That's
mine. You
yes.
know?
That's so very powerful. I mean, it's just a you know, it's affirming, and it definitely does something to how you see yourself. You know, when you can picture yourself in the fabric of, um, you know, the construct of America and of pretty much all over. Because there
Mhm.
was a time when there were not even other, was a time when there were only Black people on this earth. That may be hard to hear sometimes, but because of different conditions and environment, that's a whole nother history and a whole nother lesson for another day. Because some people, I've heard some teachings that said that all the races were created on the sixth day, and then I've heard some say that that because of environmental conditions, the melanin left the skin. Melanin is what gives us our brown tones, and in all of their rainbows of color in the brown scheme. So the melanin, there was some time frames when there was a lack of that. The sun has a lot to do with that, and that created and gave way to people without melanin. So that's why sometimes we'll talk about melanin rich and melanin lacking, and so, through the thousands and thousands of years, these evolutionary changes. And when I say evolutionary changes, I'm talking about in different environments, in your environment, because of your lack of, like I said, the sunlight, and so different, vegetation, the way your, the, you know, it's just a science to it that I'm not an expert in, but, that created, the people without the melanin, which is what creates our dark hue. So all of the people systems and all of the things that make us who we are, we are very much foundational to creating those civilizations, as they say, in our technologies, the writing systems. When you go back to Kemet and you do some research, our ancestors were the first creators, I believe, of emojis. When we see the little, pictorial, but that was at one time, we call them, the Greeks call it hieroglyphics, but the Meduneter is really the Kemetic name. And so a lot of that, those inscriptions and things are pictorial. They're ways of telling a story, based on the characteristics of certain animals, based on a lion's characteristics, based on, an elephant's characteristics, a symbol of strength. So you've got a lot of symbology in terms of, a lot of the things that inscriptions and things that we saw in Egypt, but we always thought, we see a man with a bull, well, those were a bull's head. Well, those were masks, and it was a personification of the qualities and characteristics of a bull, the animal, and so, it's just a series of study that one has to be open to doing. Because if you shut down, I remember as, growing up as, in a particular religion, and we were always told that those who were not of that religion did not know the truth, quote unquote. And so, when you hear that, you just automatically dismiss anyone else's ideology, way of thinking and what they have been taught. So you automatically, I was automatically dismissive of Muslim people. I was automatically dismissive of people who may have practiced. Oh my goodness. So we are.
Yes, we are definitely live.
Be right back.
No problem. No problem. While she's handling that, I love what she was saying about when you were raised and you're told that if people don't believe the way I believe, there's something wrong with them. And I remember my community feeling the same way. It was like, your holiness, in our practice, in our doctrine, in our way of doing Christian, right? Because there's so many different beliefs among Christians, and our way of doing Christianity was holiness. Um, and in the holiness tradition, it was like if you consulted with anybody who believed differently than you did, then that was wrong. That was part of your consulting with the world. It's supposed to be different. And sometimes, and I understand why. Well, I didn't understand as a child why that was the truth. So I can't even say I understood why. I just had no other choice but to accept certain things because that was the way I was raised. But there was always something in me that wanted to know people based on who they were, not their association with anybody, not because they belonged to a certain group, not because they worshiped a certain way. I always had this sense of loving people, connecting with people based on their character, their kindness, their openness, their accessibility, those kinds of things. And in my church, I was vilified for it. In my church denomination, I was vilified for it. There was a Christian group in high school that told my cousin to disassociate with me because I was eating with sinners. I was eating lunch with sinners and that kind of thing. And it's that kind of thinking that keeps you trapped. It keeps you trapped. And if you don't know something, people can really use you. They can keep you in bondage because they can make you afraid to look outside of whatever they built for you. And I know I was around different people who were afraid to look outside. They were afraid to look out the window. They were afraid to talk to somebody different. They were afraid to talk religion and to allow other people with other religious beliefs to have a conversation out of fear that they would cause you to doubt your beliefs. And as I've gotten older, I really realized that my fundamental beliefs, my fundamental relationship with the God of my understanding is not altered by my having conversations with other people about their faith, about their culture, about their religion, about their practices, where it came from, all that. Because I look like somebody was saying, and I can't remember who this person was, but she was saying, we're all looking at the same moon. It's just that you're describing how you see it, but we're all pointing and looking at the same moon. And I'm not here to try to change anybody's theology or their religion, but I am here because I really believe that a part of us taking back who we are as a people is we have to determine who we are. It can't be trying to live up to somebody else's definition who doesn't know who we are. And for so many years, I was banging my head against this wall where certain things that I did naturally were vilified until I talked to other people. One of the big things that I'm finding out, even as I continue to talk to people and connect with my roots and all of that, even in all of that, I'm beginning to find out certain things that were natural for me that were considered rebellious or wrong, living here. When I talk to people of African descent or look back in my history and look at how my people were, I'm like, oh my God, this is in my DNA. And when you can see it through a different lens, then you can say to yourself, wait, but this wasn't a bad thing, right? This isn't something I needed to leave, I needed to lose, needed to change. This is part of who I am. As a Black woman, I'm expressive. I am animated. And sometimes in corporate circles, and I know some of my sisters out there who work in corporate circles can co-sign on this. They feel like they have to temper their natural way of being because they're trying to make sure they don't offend anybody. And that's where I'm talking about that generational shame. When you have to censor who you are, when you have to always consider, I don't want to offend a race of people that don't know me. I don't want to offend my white boss. I don't want to offend my white coworkers. I got to tone it down so they won't think I'm being angry. And when you live that way, then there's a shame around the way you automatically operate in the world. And I'm hoping that by us being here and talking about it, that it will at least make you feel curious to take an ancestry test, to talk to somebody of a different culture, to reach across the aisle, across the waters, and try to connect with someone of African descent. Join a group. The beautiful thing on Facebook, there are groups now. Whatever, like for instance, my DNA is very heavily Isan. So I've been able to connect with the Isan community, go on websites, connect with groups so that I can learn about my culture and learn from different aspects. I've heard the masculine aspect, I've heard learning the feminine aspect. I'm researching, I'm comparing, I'm digging, because just like people can tell a different story from talking to someone here in America, You can talk to one person, they can tell you their point of view. But so that I learn enough that I can form my own sense of connection to something bigger than me. Shoulders I can stand on. When I say my ancestors, I know whose shoulders I'm standing on. You know, I know it was important to them. I know why they did what they did. And to me, that just makes such a wonderful difference. And a healing can take place, I think, in us reaching out to our roots. I'm glad you're back. I've been kind of filling in space and
I do
everything.
apologize. I do apologize. Like you said, that's real live
There's a
streaming.
lot.
And I tell you what, but I know my alarm system works very well.
It is so good. Well, tell us, what started you to looking? I know you said your grandmother, was she instrumental in you wanting to dig into your roots, or was there something that you experienced that made you want to reach out? What was it? I've been telling them about me, but what about you?
Yeah, I always had an appreciation and didn't understand how much the Gullah community, Gullah Geechee, some people use the term in, the impact of the Gullah community on American history. And when I was able to put two and two together, that my grandma was, when I got old enough of an age, and I was like, oh, okay, so that's the difference in her. It just kind of started me into looking into more things about history and learning about the Gullah people. When I first moved here, I didn't like the history. I was like, oh, slavery, slavery, slavery. It was just about slavery, but then just broadening my thought process and horizons about the history here in Charleston. When I started working downtown, for example, downtown Charleston, and I even started taking a look at some of the historical places and locations, the markers, and I remember visiting they call it the old slave market. It's a museum, but it was actually where our ancestors were brought. It's an actual location that still stands today. The old brick is there and everything, where they would take. It's next to the wharf, next to the Charleston is a port city and has where ships can be. The ships are not very far away, and so that area. It's almost like I had an out-of-body experience, because I was always so against slavery, right? But when I went to that location of where our ancestors were even sold on the street, when they brought them off the ship, they cleaned them up and had them in this place that was a holding cell. And here, when you read more into, like, sometimes you see these posts about how they would advertise the enslaved that were brought over, one female, one male, one young, and it just kind of, they talked about them in commercial terms, like they were chattel, actually, cargo. Basically, that's what we weren't seen as human beings. And so it just made me do a deeper study. I turned the anger into interest. What were, the foundation of, our people. It just made me, I had that experience. I'll go back to that, where I felt like it was almost like like I went through some sort of a portal or something. And I remember feeling like woozy, and like I was hearing cries, and I was hearing, and I was just feeling the energy from that area, that, it was like my ancestors saying, you need to learn more about us. And I believe in the supernatural. Mm-hmm. I believe we serve a supernatural entity. The creator, the most high God, is supernatural. And I believe in the ancestral realm. I believe that, we don't die, we transition. In the movie The Black Panther, some of those thoughts, it kind of brought it alive to me even more. Now, I'm a huge Black Panther fan,
Me too.
because
Because of
it
that.
showed me, something that I always felt was, a part of us. And you could even, like I said, the different parts about T'Challa when he went back to the ancestral realm, saw his father and things like that. I was like, yeah, I know that that's right. And I know that that's real, and the Bible talks about a great cloud of witnesses. And when you think
Mhm.
about a great cloud of witnesses, who are you talking about? What are you referring to? We can talk about angels with no problem, Michael, the archangel. We talk about, but what about our ancestors and the cloud of witnesses who watch over us, the people that have gone on before us? Now, who would be most interested in your best? Who would take the most interest in your best interest? Who would have your best interest at heart? My grandmother, I know, would be the one that would have my best interest at heart. And if I can still feel her presence and her energy around me, for her to keep telling me to keep going, you can do this. You know, this is the way, walk in it. That's and so it just caused me to do an even deeper dive. And then when I met the ambassador online and he reached out, it's sometimes the internet can be a negative thing and sometimes it can be a force for good. But it really brings, I mean, he's all the way in Nigeria, and Facebook, social media allows him to be able to connect with us. We connect on Facebook, and so that really just shortens that distance between us. And it's important, when he reached out to me and knew where I was, and I talked about this area. And so he's a historian. He's been even doing his study on the roots of Charleston and the people, the cultural background. What I've found out in my studies is that the people over in Africa probably in some cases have been told incorrect things about us, like the harshness and the barbaric nature of the slave trade. I don't even think they can begin to fathom the hideousness of what took place, their ancestors, what they faced when they came over here. They can't even begin to imagine the atrocities that they faced here, and how, so that's what I've been finding out. I've been learning, the more we connect and I connect with people, there, and that's why I heard you say, a lot of people, when they come from over Africa, they don't want to associate, they think they have been given this image of us as American people, that the Black Americans over here are lazy and they don't want to, they're no good and you don't want to associate with them. And so they meaning the oppressor, tells stories that are inconsistent, and they put it on media and they show the thug stories and they show the this and that. And so when you come over here, you don't want to associate with them. So the power of that supernatural experience, to answer your question, when I really it was a change for me, and it started me on my own journey of learning about the power of who we were before we came over here. There is a great book called They Came Before Columbus. There are, lots of people who, and it's true, in some areas, in some region, people were already here. Not everyone was brought over on the ship from Africa. The slave trade took place, but not everybody came over that way. And that is true. So they came before Columbus. I'm a bookworm. My mama was a school teacher, so I love to read and I love books and I love, that sort of thing. So I've been reading a lot of the historians and the scholars. And so, I just took myself on a own know thyself journey, my own know myself, know thyself journey. My mother wrote that in my high school yearbook, and she didn't even realize the prophetic, the power of what she was saying. She probably did. That's an inscription in some of the, buildings in Egypt, in Kemet, know thyself, so our ancestors definitely, the power of just understanding our temperaments and our likes and our dislikes and embracing those things. You have to really understand and know, and who you are. and just knowing who I was without society telling me I had to straighten my hair, I got to look a certain way, and talk a certain way. Sometimes we were a little embarrassed about the gala way we used to talk, and because it's kind of like they say a pidgin language, or sometimes our own people disparage. You don't want to say it like that, and it like my grip, just certain things. You ain't want to say it. You ain't want to talk like that. When people talk right, you ain't want to say it, and we mean talk right. This is how I talk, and so it's just embracing all things just about us just really took on a new meaning for me when I saw the wealth in Africa, when I saw the excellence of Africa, when I saw all of the foundational things. The Greeks, they came to Africa to learn the Socrates and the Aristotle and the people who we claim are great philosophers. No, they came and sat at the feet of our ancestors and learned. They were amazed at what they saw going on the continent of Africa, and the power of the people over there. They were just enthralled. And so, in the Bible, they calls them a terrible people, Cush. Ethiopia is the first mentioned the first mention in the Bible. And I believe Eden, when you look at some of the other historical, the rivers, those are places in Africa mentioned right there in the Bible. So, let's get back to Eden, like Donald Lawrence sings, living on top of the world, and that's what it's about. It's an empire, the dynasty, the Pharaoh, the dynasty areas. There's a story of a mighty warrior that saved Jerusalem. And he was on the cover of, they had a depiction, a cover of him on the cover of National Geographic. And his Pianki was his dad, but of course his name is going to escape me right away. But when the Bible talks about this, it talks about when you see the movie The Ten Commandments and Moses, in the mist that came through the camp and slew 185,000 of King Sennacherib, slew the people who weren't the firstborn. And then there's also the story about the 185,000 the soldiers that were killed by this particular person. People say he was, it's like it was something that happened kind of mystically, but this was a mighty warrior that is mentioned in the Bible, and he is mentioned in so many, and I'm going to, I'll find his name, but it's just, the history, when you can back up the history by the geography and by the people who historically lived, then it just makes it come to life even the more.
It does. And yeah, you brought up another aspect about the first time I ever saw Black people in a history book, in an American history book, was as slaves, and what that did to me. I was in school during desegregation. As a matter of fact, me and my sister and maybe 2 or 3 other people were the first people to go to a previously all-white school, elementary school. So my 4th, 5th, and 6th grade were in a previously all-white school. And I was the only Black person in my class in the 4th grade. And then it was me and 1 other Black girl that were in my class in the 5th and 6th grade. And as I was telling Lori, the thing about it, I wasn't embarrassed. I was like, hey, I am here. I'm different. I didn't have any issues with me being who I was, because I grew up around that. So I was myself. I was articulate, and I was opinionated, and I was charismatic, and I was animated. I had no reason to hide any of that. It wasn't like going to the white school was the first definition of that. I had gone to a previously Black school, so I knew other Black people existed. Yes. So I already had this sense of community, that there were some people I can go home to that, looked like me and all that. So I didn't have any issues with being the only one. As a matter of fact, I was popular because I was different. I was
Yeah.
very popular. People liked me. They wanted to be around me. They uh they talked and everything. And I remember one little white boy tried to come at me wrong. He didn't say the N word, but he came at me wrong. And I remember my hand on my hip saying, hey, if you do so and so and so, this black so and so will so and so and so. I sure did. As a little girl, I was feisty. And so I didn't have an issue being the only one. But when I got into school, and I remember the 8th grade, I will never forget it. I opened up the history book, and about midway through, the first reference that I saw to anybody black was slavery. Now, up until that point, I didn't have any sense of shame around white people. I didn't have that kind of thing. I felt like I was just as good.
Yes.
I look different. If they want to touch my hand, sure. Does it come off? Look, it doesn't come off. I didn't have all those issues. Do I touch my hair? Sure. Sure. Well, why do you wear bows? That's what we do. No problem. I get in the 8th grade, I think it was the 8th grade, and in history, and I finally see first reference slavery.
Mm.
That was when shame just completely engulfed me. I was so hurt that was the first thing in a book, in a reference book, that had anything to do with me was slavery. I remember I was so hurt. I was trying to choke back tears. I was sitting there and I felt so exposed. I could feel the energy in the room change. It was almost like the white people, it's almost like their eyes open up and it's like, oh, so you aren't all that. We used to own you, honey. It was almost this whole change where after that, I couldn't look people in their eye. I walked for the first time. I always look people in their eye.
Yes.
With a
Yes.
little bit of attitude if you stared at me
Okay.
too long.
All right. I
But
know
that
that's
was
right.
the first time in my life that I walked out with my eyes down and I couldn't look them in the eye and they couldn't look me in the eye either. And I could feel the change. And that's why I feel like it is so important. Even if Governor DeSantis and any of these people try to take African American history and studies out of the schools, I feel like it's important to us to know what our history is so we can educate our children
Right.
before the school system gets to them.
That's so
Because
true.
that school system was not designed to make Black kids feel good about being Black.
No, and we do. We have to begin, with information sessions like this, we have to begin to rewrite the history because, and it's like, who'd have thought we would see where we would be backing up? I feel like, people like what's going on, the things that are happening in Florida to try to take away, the history out of the books. That's moving backwards. That's taking steps backwards. That's not a good step. So we have to do it ourselves. We have to continue to educate ourselves. We have to make it our priority to engage in the study of, the valuable contributions. What are the social systems, the moral systems, the systems of justice that were already in place? I intend to look to Africa for those answers, the foundational things. Like I shared with you the other day about Ma'at and the 43 principles of Ma'at, and that, Dr. Malana Karenga is someone who is a great person in terms of he calls himself an activist scholar, and he's been at this since he's 25 years old, and he's a little up in age now, but his whole desire, and he is actually the founder of Kwanzaa. And if we've been able to unify around a system like Kwanzaa, where the Kiswahili terms for unity and self-determination, cooperative economics, and all of those things that we can incorporate and look to, you know, unitedly, we can unite on helping each other, each one teach one, teaching the history. And the Ma'at principles, I'll go back, they are based on foundational things like truth, righteousness, reciprocity, justice, balance, harmony. And so the 43 principles come from those foundations, such as, and I, you know, like, I will not steal. I will not act with violence. I will not be unjust. I will not cause the shedding of tears. I will not sow seeds of regret. I will not lay waste the plowed land. I will not speak against any person. These are our systems, and you might not be able to see it, but the 42 laws of Ma'at, and the symbol of Ma'at is a beautiful Egyptian woman, a Black Egyptian woman with a feather, because when you say I will not, as opposed to thou shalt not, you know, when you get the thou shalt not, there's a natural tendency to be like, why not? I might try.
Or cower, like, oh God.
Yeah, like, oh my God.
Somebody else is telling me what I'm going to do.
Yeah.
But the other,
but
I
then,
will not.
But when you will not, because you don't want to.
Yeah, it comes
because
from
you have a
you.
Respect. There's a difference in that. I will not, because I don't want to. I don't have a desire to be devious towards my fellow man, you know, my sister, my brother. Because if I truly love my sister, if I truly love my brother, I will not sleep with his wife. I will not sleep with her husband, because I don't want to.
I don't want
you know,
to.
Because I have a love for her and a respect for her as a woman, as someone that it's a dignity in that. There's a dignity in that.
Yes.
You know, and stop all this, you know, oh, you know, we only human. Paul in that book, in that Bible said, quit ye like mortals or something. He said, quit acting like mortal people. You come from the Most High God. And if he can have a higher frequency, I'm not saying, now I understand, you know, there are seasons in our life where we go through changes, and usually great adversity brings about, you know, I done learned my lesson, you know, when you get beat up long enough, and you fall and you skin up your knees long enough, and you know, you might fall and break a leg or break an arm, you know, that's likened to these things in life, you know, when you know, like, and so it's like Paul said, when I become a man, I put away childish things. And I reference the Bible a lot too. There's a lot of good lessons in it. It's a very sacred book. And there are a lot of life lessons in there. And so Paul said, when I grow up, I'm no longer, you know, and there's some things, you know, I don't do childish things anymore. When you're mature, when you get to a place of maturity and you have integrity, these are the values that you hold on to. And our people had values. They had integrity. They had a moral compass, you know, that we can look at even today and go back to, you know. Yeah. But when we have no reference of ourselves as being kings and queens and, you know, statesmen and people of high, you know, nobility, high caliber, nobility, you know, when you don't see that, because it was a concerted effort to hide that from us. But if we saw the power of who we were and the civilizations, how they ran so well, and the justice system. I remember Professor John Henry Clark saying there was no prisons and jails because we didn't have a need for that. If somebody got out of line, the community took care of them swiftly, you know, and it was but you know, this system that we live in now, the justice system, there is no justice, you know. But anyway, I don't want to get too deep into that, but I'm just, you know, just going back to say that, you know, blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness. Ma'at is based on truth and right living. Ma'at is based on that. And Dr. Mu'ata Ashby, Dr. Ashby is a very well-known writer, and he talks about the principles of Ma'at and the introduction to Ma'at philosophy. And as I said, Dr. Malana Karenga, who is elderly, but he's still with us, and he created Kwanzaa. And so, I love studying people like that, because the righteousness is what it is that they want the excellence of our people is what they want us to get back into, knowing who we are.
Knowing who we are, getting back to self-respect and honor and dignity, not looking for somebody else to give it to us, but that we give it to ourselves, because that's who we are. And I love that, because it all goes back to knowing yourself. It all goes back to writing your own definition for you, instead of trying to live up to somebody's definition or refute somebody's definition. Because in both cases, their definition is what you're fighting against. But I believe when you know who you truly are, you ain't got to fight nothing. All you got to do is be who you are. And whatever comes with that, if they treat you wrong, it doesn't change who you are. And that was something I needed, because I'm like, a lot of these things that happen in this country, and kind of bringing it together, making my peace with some things. It's like, just because it happened to me doesn't mean it defines me. There's a definition bigger than this. There's a definition, and I'm not going to be hypocritical, because there are some aspects of living here that have been good for me.
Yes.
I'm not going to act like everything was terrible and, oh my God, being in America was so terrible, and I just could barely put the makeup on to just come up here and talk to you. No, there are some things that are wonderful here, but there has to be, for me, I had to have a foundation for me that went bigger than what I've experienced in this country, because by the grace of God, I have all my marbles, not because I did not have to fight, not because I did not have to dig down deep enough inside of me to connect with my own truth, not because it took work for me to have the sanity that I have in this country. And I realized that with the death of my parents, or the transition of my parents rather, that I needed a foundation even bigger than that, bigger than my great grandmother, bigger than my great great, bigger than my great great great. I need to know, okay, my DNA came from here. And like you said, a lot of people have had different things to say about Black Panther and Wakanda Forever and the Woman King and some of these other stories that have made it to the movie screens and TV sets all over America and in the world. But for me, growing up here, it is so wonderful, so healing. It was so healing for me to see the Black Panther. Because I had a context of seeing my people through a lens that took National Geographic and elevated it. And even when I watched, I think there's the documentary by Jada Pinkett Smith that's out, African Queens on Netflix.
I've heard about it. I haven't seen it yet.
I watched it all yesterday. There are 4 episodes to it. And I watched it yesterday. I want you to know it gave so much dignity. Not that the story was told through the lens of perfection, because a lot of people are kind of like wanting to connect with their African roots as if it's going to make things perfect. Like this was a perfect people and, perfect. But kings and queens had to make some serious decisions that were not popular, that were awful, that weren't good. So I don't look at my roots as being perfect. My roots had flaws too, but there was still a dignity that seeing these different depictions of us, seeing beautiful dark-skinned women, and not beautiful by a European standard.
Right.
Seeing wonderful men, not by a European standard. Yes. Seeing the dignity of our race, the elegance of it, the quality of it, the culture, the beliefs, the character, all that behind it, the complexity, the beauty, the brilliance, all that was evident. And they weren't trying to be these things. They weren't competing with somebody else to be just as good. They weren't having to live up to somebody else's modicum of their success. They were just being who they are. And like
Yes.
you and I talked about, I'm about to lose the hashtags Black Girl Magic and Black Excellence because we don't need a hashtag.
Mm-hmm.
It ain't no magic involved.
Okay.
We are who we are.
You are.
And if
That's
other
right.
people think it's magical, great. But we're just being who we are.
That's good.
Excellence is just who we are
Yes, that's
because it's
good.
the dignity and the poise with which we carry ourselves and our allegiance to those qualities that you have talked about in the Miyat. It's those kind of things that are inside
Mm-hmm.
of us that come from a spiritual connection that you can't capture in a book. You can't
Come on.
capture it. It is a belief system that comes from our deity, comes from our divine DNA that governs us, that we have to connect with. I believe it was that connection that made Harriet Tubman say, oh, no way. This slaves
Yes,
obey their masters is a bunch of BS here.
that's
I
right.
don't care if it's in the Bible. I don't care if you try to tell me it's Christian. Ain't nothing Christian about this.
That's right.
Ain't
Not a
nothing
thing.
Christian about it. And
Mm-hmm.
so that spirit, that Holy Spirit, that
Yes.
divine spirit that
Mm-hmm.
you cannot capture said, freedom, freedom, the voice of freedom. I will die first.
Yes.
I will risk my life first.
Yes.
It's connecting with the roots of that.
Yes.
And when I
Yes.
connect with my people, I understand, oh, you aren't the only one.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
If you were to be with your people, that's how your people are. That's
Yes.
what your roots tell you.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And in this world, in this side, on this continent, in these United States, they might try to vilify you for it. But
Mm-hmm.
baby,
Baby.
there's a DNA that's bigger than what anybody can say about you.
Mm.
And it behooves us as a people to
Mm-hmm.
stop just taking what's handed to us and trying to make lemonade out of it. Sometimes
Yeah.
the lemons are not yours. You throw them back because they don't belong to you.
Okay.
And we're so used to making lemonade out of everything. Sometimes it's like, forget your drink. I want to make my own.
All right. Come on now, sister. That's right. Maybe I don't
My,
want lemonade.
I don't want your lemonade. And I know that I'm not going to go back to some traditions as they were. I get it.
Yes.
But the
Yes.
spirit of it,
Mm-hmm.
the dignity of it,
Yes.
the validity of it.
Yes.
I am a representation of the validity of it. And I refuse to let anybody else, because they're nervous about it,
Come on.
make me damn it.
Right. Oh, you're
And
so right.
that's what I'm hoping in us merging,
Mm-hmm.
in us coming together to realize the beef ain't one we started.
We ain't. Oh, come on,
We
sister.
didn't start the
Ooh.
beef. The media started this stuff.
That's right. That's
And
right.
that if we would just dare to reach
Mm-hmm.
across the aisle, African American, Black experience to African, and just to talk about and to merge and to see and to just come with this openness, this curiosity.
Yes.
There is healing in it. At least
So
there's healing for me. I'm feeling more and more validated, more and more liberated. The more I connect,
yes.
the
Yes.
more I connect. And I just wanted to bring this to our Facebook live pages, and as people share it, that they might get something completely different, but at least start the quest.
At least started. And everybody has their own journey.
Has their own
Everybody,
journey.
everybody has a journey, but your journey is foundational because if you look in the mirror, there is a power and there's in the reflection. Michael Jackson had that song, we start with the man or the woman. I'm starting with the man in the mirror. So the woman in the mirror, when the woman looks like you, there is, there's such a value in the roots. And as we said, when you go back, take a careful look. You have to be open though. You have to be ready for that. Not everybody wants to do the work, and the work is, but when we have these conversations, the desire, and I just truly love you for having that desire, for people to experience what you're experiencing, what I'm experiencing, to get to the bottom of this. It can't be what we have been told all these hundreds and hundreds of years. And then they're still trying to make an effort to blot it out of history. There's something to be said about that.
Our humanity.
Arguing,
debating it.
Yeah, it wasn't. I don't think the civil rights movement was more of civil than it was for human rights. We needed to be fighting for the right to be human. They didn't even want to accept the fact that we were human, and so this has to continue. And I know this is just the start of you and I exploring this, but we have to be able to continue this. And like I said, I'm a bookworm. I would love to connect. I think a lady inboxed me earlier, maybe someone that said, I was told to contact you. How do I get started? With learning my African roots. And I told it, one of the things I did was to do an ancestry test, do a DNA test. There are lots of DNA tests out here today. A friend of mine says sometimes some of them are not as specific as he would like it to be, but they'll just place you in a pretty much in a region, but so I would say do your research on your, do your research on the different tests, the DNA tests that are available. But start right in your home. Start right in your own, in your own line. I remember there was a time when I was young, I couldn't go past my grandmother's name. And I said, this is, when I thought about it, the light bulb went off. I said, my grandmother had a mother and a father. My great grandmother, well, who was her mother? Their mothers and father, and so on. Your great, 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 greats and on. As far back as you can get into that history in your own, you'll find some gems and some jewels and some treasures right there in your own lineage. Your own lineage may uncover somebody that went on to make some great creation. Maybe they did a great invention, or maybe they were a great singer back in the day. Maybe they were a musician. Maybe they were an astronomer. Maybe they were something that you would not even think like, wow, that you have right in your own lineage. So start with your own family tree, try to get, in oral history, our ancestors, our elders are kind of leaving us, but, now is the time, especially if they're still clear and lucid and they know, big mama name and, auntie's name and cousins' names. And if they can still, if they're still able to give you that information, build on that, start your family tree and build on that. Then you can do your DNA. A lot of times I know Ancestry, they'll connect you with other people, they'll tell you who matches and their possibility they could be a second, fourth cousin, fifth cousin, or whatever. Ancestry does that. Like I said, that's why I always suggest that people do their research on the DNA testing that they want to do. And so there's AfricanAncestry.com. But, just as simple as even starting your own family tree, find out who your grandmother's parents were, and on your mother and your father's side. Do you know, I was, was one of the historians that says there are over 1 million people that go into you being here. Because when you go back so many generations, there are so many people that have gone into you being here, and I thought, wow, that makes sense. And how far, I have a cousin, he's like our family historian on my dad's side, and I'm getting to learn him because I didn't always know who my dad was. That's a story for another day. So he has traced it back to the 1500s.
Wow.
So I'm still learning. It's a process, it's a journey, but it's a journey that's so worth it. It's just so worth it.
Well, you're encouraging me because I'm a newbie. I've just started. I did have a DNA test. I use CRI genetics, but I am thinking about either doing ancestry.com or africanancestry.com because I heard that I think with them, they list out the people that they find that your DNA is associated with, and the CRI genetics test didn't do that. So I would
Okay.
love to actually have as much as they can give me.
Mhm.
Um, about then I think that's you were telling me that's how you found a cousin or something.
Yeah, I found, well, she turned out to be my cousin, but she was also able to find out who her dad was. She didn't know who her father was. And because, we could, she inboxed me and she says, hey, according to ancestry.com, you and I are very close cousins. We're second cousins. And it come to find out, my father's first cousin was a very famous bass player for the Funk Brothers, a group of musicians that were session musicians for so many of the Motown greatest hits. And
Wow.
she was able to find out that that was her father because, like I said, he was my father's first cousin. So, he was my grandmother's nephew. And so, you know, and just the power in that. And it took us almost a year to kind of figure it out because she didn't really know many names. I didn't really know many names. And then I started kind of talking. We started having conversations with other people, that showed up in the connections. And it took a little minute, but then we were able to put the two and two together. And, one of my cousins was like, oh, I know, I may have said one of her sister's names or something. And then he was like, that name sounds familiar. They used to live down the street from us in Detroit. And so it just kind of, just took off like that. And then come to find out, yeah, she was a love child. Papa was a Rolling Stone, but at
Oh.
least she was able to find out for sure who her father was. Everybody has the right to know that. You have a right to know who your
Yes.
father, who your mother is for sure. They say mama's baby, papa's maybe, but DNA don't lie. They say Dana don't lie.
DNA don't lie.
It's going to tell the truth all day long. But it's necessary.
It
It's
is
very,
necessary.
very necessary because now you know where your mannerisms come from, where
Exactly.
you know who you are and why you do the things you do and why you are the way you are. And even health reasons, it's important to know those things because of health, different genetic things that may be, you could trace down to, to your ancestry and your DNA and stuff like that. So it's important to know. So this is just an amazing time to be alive. It's just a
It
really, really
is.
exciting time to be alive. And so I'm just grateful that you and I have now decided to join arms and come together for
Oh
this.
yeah.
For
We're gonna
this.
figure this thing out. And even just as sisters, I just feel like there's such a connection. Like I said on my post, I met your heart before I met your face.
Wow.
And it was just beautiful. And I've had a very great experience so far. And I believe it's because this is what I'm supposed to be doing. I believe this was God's answer to that part of me that when I felt like I lost my mom and my dad, that that place that manifested like, okay, well, they're gone. And I really believe that this is his answer to foundationally for me to create a foundation that even is deeper and bigger and richer than even my parents, that I stand on broad shoulders and
Yes.
I and helping to understand, like you said, my mannerisms and my predispositions and the way I chew and the way I do this and the kind of music I like. It's like you
Yes.
you go back and you go, oh my God, oh, this is it. And at which time, and I really believe I will be able to go to Africa and really meet some people in my culture. I just
Yeah.
look forward to walking up and seeing them and talking with them and seeing things. And I'm like, oh my God, I do that. Oh my God, I do that.
Yes.
Oh my God. Oh, she looks like me. Oh my God.
Mhm.
Just to have that sense of a
Yes.
bigger connection than here. And so I'm so grateful that we've had this talk. Others have joined us. I see Faye Garrett. Hello, my Faye, and Cora Brown, my homie from Kinston. So great to see you all listening and watching. If you're just tuning in, listen to the replay. We've been on here since about 1 o'clock, and it's about time for us to bring it in. But it's such a rich conversation, and I hope that even there's some things that we say that will just either help you to feel more comfortable in your black skin
Mhm.
on its terms, not on somebody else's. That you
Yes.
are enough just because you're here and you were in the thought of God, in the thought of higher intelligence, in the thought of that energy to be important enough that you were watched over in your mother's womb through her 9 months, through whatever she went through, that you were watched over, whether you came here by cesarean or vaginal birth, whether she gave birth to you in the bathroom, in the bed, under whatever circumstances, that there was a greater energy that watched over you because you were so necessary.
Yes.
And that gives you the right to everything that comes with being human and being here, that you are necessary. You're 100% worthy, 100% worth it. You're 100% enough. And so I'm so grateful that you're joining. Go back to the replay. I wish we could start it over again so you could be a part of just the beginnings, but that's the beauty of Facebook Live. You can go back and listen to the replay, anything that resonates with you. Please feel free to put in the comments. And Lori, please tell them how to get in contact with you, just in case they want some help with connecting with their African roots, and that you have these different connections and this is your passion. So let them know how they can get in contact with you.
Sure. I have a Facebook page. It's Moments with LJ, and also right here, Lori R. Johnson, and under Ufe Dojo. If they searched Lori, my government name, Lori R. Johnson, they'll find, Ufe Dojo, Agula. They're more than welcome to connect with me here. And so, yeah, that definitely. And I'm going to be doing some podcasting coming up really soon. And I hope you and I can, even do some more, maybe special edition Mondays, or however you, want to do that. I would love to do that. But yes, and I also, heavenradiofm.com. I am on in the midday. It's a station, an inspiration gospel station here in the Charleston area, heavenradiofm.com. And it streams live. And I'm on, like I said, Monday through Friday from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. And every now and then I'll put some nuggets in there about some history. I love to share books because I love to read. And, so I'm willing to share whatever, knowledge. And, you have people who have been doing this research for a lifetime. And I honor those people, that have been doing this research and have been on the battlefield, telling about, our contributions and who we are as a people, and have, maybe been marginalized back then. Can you imagine how they were marginalized back then during, in fighting for the right to talk about, our histories? And you have a lot of the African studies programs now being instituted in HBCUs, for example, and, colleges and universities, the Howards and the Spelmans and the Clark, and the Black universities that have the African studies. And so these scholars, there, many people, Professor James Small, he's somebody that just came in my heart. He's very near and dear to my heart. He's born, in South Carolina, Charleston, Georgetown, I believe is where. And he talks about how, being in Georgetown, South Carolina was just like being, in Africa, in the village, right there in the village, where all of the love, all of the, everything just takes place. So I just encourage you, as I said, if you want to reach out and hear any more books, just being willing, the willingness to hear about some things that may challenge your theology,
it definitely will.
Might kill a few sacred cows,
Yeah.
but, as long as you're open and you're willing to hear a different way, because I tell you what, the energy that went into hiding and keeping us away from who we are, that's telling in itself.
Yes, it is.
Why would you take that much energy to fight, us knowing who we are, and to keep us, even fighting against ourselves,
exactly, stripping the culture away.
Yeah,
why were you so intimidated by that?
Culture. What in that intimidates you so much so that you just placed all this energy into covering it up? And like I said, just one last thing, and I know we're wrapping up, but just at the NFL, the song by James Weldon Johnson, "Lift Every Voice and Sing," was Cheryl, I believe Cheryl Ralph.
Cheryl Lee Ralph, yeah.
Cheryl Lee Ralph, she sang the Black National Anthem, and some of the hate-filled comments. Oh, you can leave the woke stuff out, and this country ain't got but one national anthem, and we don't need the black stuff, and it was some hideous comments.
The whole thing of this being woke. It's like, woke. No, we're talking about our heritage. This is not even a woke thing. This is just, it is what it is. And I love the fact that you're talking about it, and we're talking about how, you see these little aggressions, and sometimes big aggressions.
Big.
But when you know who you are, you know your roots, and you know who you stand, the foundation of you, then regardless of what people may say or do, it doesn't change how you see yourself. And that's the beautiful thing, especially for us Black women, Black men, Black babies, Black children, that we are responsible now. We do have the tools. We can reach out. We can reach out to somebody in Nigeria, or in Zambia, or somewhere like that. We can reach out now. We got the internet, so there's no reason now for us not to connect.
That's exactly
there
right.
There is no reason, and I hope that people will be inspired to do it in their own way, but to also get interested in knowing who you are, not by somebody else's definition, but who you are on your own accord, your own terms. That's what I'm about. And I'm about that when it comes to relationships, love on your terms. Those of you who follow me, that's what I preach all the time. Love on your terms, relationships on your terms, healthy relationships from the inside out, really loving yourself. And I think part of loving yourself is not feeling like you got to live up to anybody else's definition. You might have to do certain things to get the bank, to get the coins, but that should not become your definition, though. It's like, I might have to sit and be quiet in the boardroom. Yes. But I don't believe that there's anything wrong with my voice.
That's
right. I don't have a reason to cover it up or explain my voice, so that it will bring dignity on dignity's terms. Back to our conversation, and thank you so much.
Thank you. Oh my God, such a pleasure being here. Every time we talk, it just feels so like natural, right? And it's supposed to be, and I'm just very, very grateful for you. And thank you.
You too. Grateful for you. Well, y'all, that's it. Our special edition of Relationship Talk. Next week, I'll be back on Tuesday doing what I normally do, talking about the things that I wish somebody had told me about relationships before I thought I knew better. So we'll be back to having that conversation, because, hey, healthy relating starts with you, but also in your romantic lives. It's all about having healthy romantic relationships, and not walking around here bumping your head against the wall, thinking that there's something wrong with you. It's just that what we don't know is only what we don't know. And it is my job, and it is part of my passion and my calling, to share what I've learned, so that it can help equip you, help you to be comfortable in who you are, so that you can have the great love that you deserve. Well, that's it for today. I look forward to any comments you have. Even if you listen to the replay, feel free to put in comments. I will definitely be going back and looking at them. I'm gonna ask. I'm gonna try it. Euphadosia. Did I get it right?
Euphadosia.
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 Euphadosia. To put her information, the books that she is she's talking about. If you're interested in reading those, maybe we can find some links and put those in the comments and maybe pin it to the top or something, or I can always change the description, add those in for those of you that want to just kind of get started. For those of you that are saying, I don't know what to do, I want to trace my ancestry, but I don't know what to do, just Google. That's what I did. I Googled what are the top 10 most reliable, DNA tests. And that's how I came up with CRI genetics. But that was back in 2018. It has gotten much, much better since then. And if you just want to just shoot to the top, which is something I wish I had done and I'm going to do, is go through africanancestry.com, because I want to get down to as close to by DNA, the migration of it, and what village and all that kind of thing. If it can help me do that, then I want to do that, because one day I do want to go to Africa and be able to connect with my people. So that's it. Any final words, any takeaways you want us to have before we go?
And a takeaway, and for those that are joining the replay, again, I do apologize for the snafu with the alarm going off and everything like that. And but I just really appreciate, like I said again, that we definitely are in a time period that I feel a spiritual awakening has taken place. And give yourself grace. Be patient with yourself. If you say, well, I don't really know, a lot about my immediate family, just take your time and work with what you have. A great resource is the library. Every town has a library, and ours here has a genealogy room where they allow you access to, records that you may be able to, kind of cross-reference with names you may know. You may know a few names, but just it's a journey, it's a process. It's not going to happen overnight, but as much as I can help you, I'm willing to do that. And so again, I just thank you all for your time, for your interest, for being here, and just know that it's a great endeavor. Knowledge of self. If we don't know who we are, and if you don't have a love for your own self, you can't really give much love to others. So you have to know who you are and have a love for yourself before you can, be there for others. So thank you again.
Thanks again. Well, that's it. I don't have anything else to add except for ditto. So take care, everybody, and have a great day. Bye now.